Ladies and gentlemen, how do?
Hello, all you wonderful people. Today I am bringing you a little story that I like to call The Great Nuclear Myth and Near Meltdown. And as European governments scramble to meet net zero targets, energy experts continue to debate the role of nuclear power as a reliable, climate-resilient alternative to fossil fuels. Well, that is a load of utter, unadulterated nonsense. Climate-resilient alternative. Reliable. Did anyone read The Wire today? Did they open a single news app before believing any of that nonsense? Oh, but nuclear is safe and low carbon? Those that get all their information from ChatGPT try their best to reliably inform everyone. But low carbon is useless if it doesn't bloody work. Romania's entire nuclear capacity, 20% of the nation's electricity, just went offline. Poof, gone, vanished. Why? Was it a terrorist attack? Was it a Godzilla rampage? No, because the river dried up. The Romanian River Shants. Let's recap this triumph of modern engineering, shall we? Romania has one nuclear plant, Cernavod. Beautiful name. Sounds like a villain's lair in a James Bond film. And it relies on the Danube River to keep its reactors from turning into a glowing puddle of radioactive slag. Except Europe is currently suffering a heat wave so blistering that the Danube, the second longest river in Europe, has dropped to record low levels. So what did the Romanian government do to keep the lights on? Did they turn on the solar panels? Did they crank up the wind turbines? No. They deployed the armed forces to blow up underwater rock formations with military explosives. They tried to dynamite a river into flowing faster. And when that didn't work, do you know what they did next? They sank 4 barges full of rocks into the water to try and force the river towards the cooling pipes. They were performing a pagan water ritual with naval explosives and sunken barges just to keep the future of so-called clean nuclear energy from melting down. It's not nuclear physics. It's a pirate strategy from 1642. Sink the galleon, lads, or the reactor's going to blow. And did it work? No. They had to shut the entire plant down anyway. The whole country is in a state of energy emergency. They had to fire up a dirty, ancient, lignite coal plant to stop the national grid from collapsing. They're burning coal to replace the overhyped green miracle of nuclear. But ChatGPT says it's safe and clean, so it must be fantasy. And yet, if you go on Twitter or LinkedIn, YouTube, or listen to any Silicon Valley tech bro who's made $10 million selling pictures of digital monkeys, what do they tell us? Oh, wind and solar are so intermittent. What happens when the wind doesn't blow? What happens when the sun sets? We need baseload power. We need nuclear. So you asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said nuclear is the most efficient baseload solution. Oh, ChatGPT, you think that national energy policy can be based on a glorified predictive text machine that eats 3 gigawatts of power a second just to write bad poetry for tech lords? What happens when the sun doesn't shine? I'll tell you what happens when the sun does shine, you absolute tech bro smooth brains. The rivers dry up. Guess what? Nuclear plants don't run on fairy dust and free market optimism. They need water to run. Yes, that's right, CO2 water. Millions of gallons of cold, fresh water. Climate change, the very thing nuclear is supposed to save us from, makes the summers so hot that the rivers boil away. Your multi-billion-pound nuclear reactor isn't a power plant anymore. It's an 80,000-ton paperweight. France, Hungary, and the reality of wind and solar, and it's not just Romania. France, the poster child for nuclear energy, had to throttle or shut down 13 of its reactors last week. Why? Because the water was either too low or the river water was too hot to cool the reactors without turning the local population into fish soup. France had a 20% drop in nuclear production in the middle of a heat wave. When everyone needs air conditioning the most, Nuclear plants go on strike because the water is lukewarm. And what about Hungary? Hungary is sinking barges into the Danube right now, begging the river gods for mercy so their Pax nuclear plant doesn't overheat. Meanwhile, what were wind and solar doing during this heat wave? The sun was shining, it was melting tarmac. The wind was blowing. A solar panel doesn't need 3 million gallons of river water to generate electricity. If a solar panel gets hot, it doesn't threaten to vaporize the country. It just sits there, silently turning photons into power. And yet the geniuses in charge want to spend 20 years and £50 billion building massive concrete monuments to the 1950s that take 2 decades to construct, run 20 times over budget, and completely freeze up the moment Europe gets a dry fortnight. Bloody marvellous. It is mental, absolutely radio rental, certified madness. We are facing a climate crisis caused by extreme weather, and our grand solution is to rely on an energy source that is completely incapacitated by extreme weather. How's that for a great, clean green and reliable solution? Oh, but what about modular? What about it? You failed wannabe lawyers who think they know everything because that's what Google or ChatGPT told you. Modular nuclear plants still require a lot of water and are about as useful as a chocolate teapot without it. The keyboard thumping would be legal geniuses who do not understand the legal definition of targeted harassment, beating their tiny chests about how wonderful, safe, clean and green nuclear energy is. Yet when asked if they would have a nuclear dump site or a reactor in their town, they go very quiet. Next month, they'll probably tell us that the answer to sea level rise is building nuclear plants right on the beach. Oh, don't worry about the rising tides. ChatGPT says the sea water will cool the core. Until a jellyfish gets sucked into the intake valve and turns off the national grid for 3 weeks. Just to keep the keyboard-thumping ChatGPT warriors happy. All right then, fine. Back to the fairy tale. And so, as European nations weigh the immediate challenges of summer heat waves against long-term energy security, the debate over nuclear power's role in a warming world continues to evolve. Get me a beer. Or just throw me in the Danube. At least I'll be useful as a boy. Well, folks, if you enjoyed this video, then not only are you lovely people, but you also have great taste, and you should subscribe to Naughty Nan Nardoes for non-grifting North American news from a true Canadian that doesn't want to sell you a tree. And you should also subscribe to the Two Davies for news and politics from a uniquely Scottish perspective with that rantastic Mr. McGuinness and his esteemed co-host, the Charlie Cat, Q Growling Cat.